Днем и ночью рабочий Баку гонит черную кровь
The
своей
Caspian
глубины,
Sea.
гонит нефть.
This is where crude oil from offshore fields was produced for the first time in history. For decades, oil engineers had installed platforms, extracted oil for the giant Soviet economy, and exported large volumes of oil to the West, but all under the control of the Kremlin. Azerbaijan, an ex-Soviet republic on the Caspian Sea, gains independence in 1991. Once the biggest oil producer in the world, it is now in the international news with images of refugees and a bloody war with neighboring Armenia. A collapsed economy, ongoing political instability, and a society in need of a better future. One that is linked to untapped reserves in the Caspian Sea and their transportation to Western markets.
Saw in Azerbaijan, a country that was once affluent, was sophisticated, was a great country, suddenly faced with a major political and social disaster, and on which they perceived oil would be the saving grace in the future. So you had this underlying optimism for a brighter future based on the uncertainty of whether or not Western investment would come in and revitalize their industry.
However, a lot depended on the exploration and development of new offshore oil reserves.
Both the Azerbaijan team and BP and all the other companies had to get to know each other and to decide what to do. And in particular, Azerbaijan had to decide whether or not it was going to do it itself. After all, it has an enormous and very long history in oil development, or whether it was something that would be done in cooperation with foreign companies. When that decision was made and the contracts were signed, then I think the enormity of the task became very, very clear indeed.
In 1994, the Azerbaijan Republic signed an agreement with an international group of oil companies to form the Azerbaijan International Operating Company. AIOC's primary aim was to develop the offshore oil fields of Azeri, Chirag, Güneşli.
There was a very famous comment made by now one of the shareholders' presidents that if the politics are awful, keep your geology simple. And that's exactly what drove the first project forward. The contract was signed, I think it was in 94, the contract of the century, and it was designed to be the first test of whether or not it was feasible to get a successful investment in Baku, compatible with the needs of the foreign investors.
Under the early oil project, the Chirag platform was refurbished and modernized. A new terminal at Sangachal, just south of Baku, was constructed. Oil was transported using two routes, one north to Novorossiysk in Russia and one to Supsa on the Georgian Black Sea coast. Baku-Supsa was the first pipeline in the former Soviet Union bypassing Russia. But the western route could only handle small volumes of oil, and the construction of a larger pipeline was inevitable.
We didn't feel that it was that there ought to be more pipelines in Russia, though, from that region, because we didn't think that any country should have a monopoly on the pipelines. We also felt very strongly that there should be no pipelines going through Iran.
If you're looking at a longer term, then a pipeline to the Mediterranean would become essential. In the longer term, the Baku-Ceyhan route had to be the solution, and for one very, very simple reason. To compete globally in the international oil markets at a commercial level, you needed a deep water port so that you could use the largest and the biggest tankers, the VLCCs and the ULCCs.
There was already heavy crude oil traffic from the Black Sea through the Turkish Straits. Additional volumes could have posed higher risks to people living in Istanbul and to the marine environment. The Turkish government and environmental NGOs strongly opposed another crude oil pipeline to the Black Sea. The shortest route could have been constructed through Armenia, but Yerevan's occupation of Azerbaijani territories and a bilateral deadlock between Azerbaijan and Armenia did not allow realization of the shorter route. Furthermore, the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan option was economically unfeasible.
We had issues dealing with the various countries in the region, not necessarily in a negative way. For example, the companies were concerned about what the cost of the pipeline was going to be. Turkey took the position that the price was being exaggerated, or the cost was being exaggerated, and that the cost would be considerably less. We took the position with Turkey, well, okay, if you believe that the cost is that much less, then why don't you guarantee the cost of the pipeline? And in fact, that's what Turkey ended up doing.
Soon, it was proven that the entire Azeri Chirag Güneşli field had 5.4 billion barrels of recoverable oil reserves. This increased the economic feasibility of the BTC pipeline. In November 1999, the presidents of Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, and the United States signed the intergovernmental agreement for the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. The presidents of the United States, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan were also present to give political support to future development of the East-West Energy Corridor beyond BTC.
Throughout whatever issues came up, Haydar Aliyev, then the president of Azerbaijan, President Shevardnadze of Georgia, and President Demirel of Turkey all strongly supported the project. I think given those factors, BP understood the reality that this really was the only alternative, and that they could make it, and that BP could make it work, and was able to get the agreement of the other members of the consortium. And I think BP should be credited for that.
Once principal agreements were signed, teams across the three countries started work on the environmental and social impact assessment. Technical, social, and environmental experts walked the entire pipeline route to gather 11,000 pages of data. These enabled teams to draw a pipeline route with minimum impact on people and the environment. But there were also technical challenges. The pipeline would cross 1,500 watercourses, railways, roads, and climb up to 2,800 meters in the higher mountains. Throughout its entire length, BTC would be buried at least a meter below ground level to have the best safety records. No one had to be resettled as a result of the pipeline. In August 2002, an international group of 11 oil companies came together and established the BTC Pipeline Company. In September 2002, a groundbreaking ceremony took place in Azerbaijan, followed by similar events in Georgia and Turkey. In March 2003, turmoil in the Middle East and security concerns associated with war in Iraq were dominating the agenda, while the BTC pipeline team was preparing for mobilization. Iskenderun, a Turkish port on the eastern Mediterranean Sea, was one of the main hubs for BTC pipe arriving from all over the world. Steel pipe, previously produced in Japan and coated at plants in Malaysia, Germany and France, arrived here in several ships, each one carrying about 3,000 pipe joints. From here they were constantly transported to pipe yards by trucks and railway. Locally produced pipe from Turkey was also supplied to different locations. In Georgia, pipe deliveries were being funneled through the Black Sea port of Poti for transshipment by rail to 7 pipe yards across the country, including one at the port of Batumi, where pipe bound for Azerbaijan was offloaded. In Azerbaijan, rail cars from neighboring Georgia were making regular deliveries of some of the 290,000 tons of pipe that would make up the Azeri section. In Mugan, central Azerbaijan, one of the construction camps was being established near the pipe yard. Construction camps housed project offices and accommodated more than 1,000 people at peak times. The employment of local people was a priority for BTC throughout the entire project's lifetime. More than 70% of the workforce was recruited from adjoining towns and villages. Many of the accommodation units destined for Mugan and other camps were being assembled in Baku, where another Azeri company had set up a production line in an old Soviet-era car factory. Sangachal, just south of Baku, was not only the starting point for BTC, but once completed, it will be one of the biggest terminals in the world. In the early stages, many of the 1,400 workers were busily engaged in the large-scale civil engineering work to prepare the area.
Although you don't expect it in this environment, but we have actually more unworkable weather onshore than the offshore has. And that has to do with the soil, types of soil here, the clay, etc. But we are quite relaxed at the moment, and we feel we can deliver within time and within the budget.
Work was also underway on critical facilities such as the 2 giant storage tanks that will feed the pipeline and the control center. Although the shortest section of BTC was constructed through Georgia, it was among the most challenging along the entire route, with severe infrastructure deficiencies. Much of the equipment and pipe joints could only be transported using the old railway system.
The railway are working relatively satisfactory. And the other problem is the roads in Georgia. But the roads are not good. We have to say the truth. I mean, they are not in good shape. And many of the national roads that we are taking needs really a big upgrade.
In Georgia, severe winter weather had also hampered preparation of the construction camps that will serve the Salka area. This was the area from where the pipeline was going to begin its long journey over the rough and remote mountain section. But acceleration measures were taken to increase the pace. In Turkey, the turnkey contractor BOTAS, the national pipeline company, had a total of 8 subcontractors working at Ceyhan Terminal, the pump stations, and in the 3 lots of the Turkish section. The main difficulties in Turkey were getting the equipment and pipe to various pipe yards and teams mobilized on time. With the arrival of summer, teams had already started stripping the topsoil in preparation for upcoming construction activities. Along BTC, the topsoil was not always rich enough for farming, but in some areas, the natural fertility was a perfect balance of chemical, physical, and biological components. This is why the treatment of topsoil was of exceptional importance to BTC. The teams preserved the stripped topsoil in piles about 2 meters high, which would later be used to restore the right-of-way to its original condition. All along BTC, private or community land had to be acquired by land teams. This was a long process of cadastral research, community consultation, and legal procedure. In Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey, some land had to be acquired permanently, while a larger area was rented for the duration of construction activities. Most payouts were in the $10,000 to $25,000 range, although the owner of one vineyard in Azerbaijan received $500,000. The public was also kept constantly informed about the process. In both Azerbaijan and Georgia, private property law was introduced quite recently after the 2 countries gained independence in 1991. Therefore, landowners could be contacted and compensated without much difficulty. However, the pipeline route in Turkey would present a different scenario. While visiting 334 villages, the land team was going to find out that almost 70% of actual users of land did not have legal titles or tenancy agreements, because decades before, the legal owners had left their villages to live in large cities.
Çok fazla parsel There were too many parcels to deal with. The number of parcels increased to approximately 15,000. Due to multiple shareholders, we had to find over 60,000 landowners with the possibility of up to 800 people owning each parcel.
The heirs did not register their lands for generations because of various complexities. The BTC project provided financial assistance to these people for the registration, as well as legal and transportation costs.
In accordance with the World Bank guidelines and principles, the BTC pipeline company also compensated land users for any loss in agricultural activity for the duration of the construction.
We had 3 parcels of land on the right-of-way. The land and crop payment was done immediately. I could go to the bank and get it easily.
For example, if I rented my land for some time and the farmer had a proper rental certificate, he could receive crop payments from the pipeline company. They had to prove what they planted recently, and then it was quite a fair and easy process.
In some cases, farmers in remote villages of northeastern Turkey claimed that they had planted tropical plants such as banana trees to demand higher payments, but agricultural activity had already been studied carefully and integrated into the environmental and social impact assessment. The BTC pipeline company also established a community investment program helping ensure that those who were most affected by construction activities saw tangible and early benefits. The aim was to help people help themselves, whether collectively, such as through infrastructure rehabilitation projects, or individually, through microcredit schemes aimed at supporting small rural businesses. Georgia was the first section of BTC where the community investment program was started at an earlier stage of construction due to the economic difficulties of people along the route.
There have been some irrigation repair projects where new sections of new irrigation pipe have been laid to, connect up other sections so that, there's one functioning system instead of pieces of a non-functioning system. Gas supply infrastructure, school rehabilitations, roads. A couple of villages asked for road repairs. One village, interestingly, up in the mountains asked for a TV antenna. They felt that they were cut off from the world and what they really wanted was a TV antenna.
In Georgia, 2 international NGOs, CARE and Mercy Corps, worked with local NGOs. They played a catalyst role in assisting communities in identifying and implementing priority projects, as well as managing people's expectations.
This was very difficult part actually, because another the expectation was that when we come here we will create a lot of job and we will distribute money and they will pay for each job. But actually no, it took a long period and takes a lot of explanation to them why it's very important to participate, that it will give much better result, and that our main goal is to strengthen community, to help them in future be much more independent.
CARE International, along with local partner NGOs, also set up more than 200 demonstration farms to train farmers in better agricultural practices, which soon resulted in increased potato yields. On its southern end, BTC meets the Ceyhan Marine Terminal, from where Caspian crude will be shipped to world markets. When the terminal becomes operational, a special zone needs to be created to ensure the safe movement of tankers and protection of the community, as well as the environment. This exclusion zone would reduce the fishing grounds of a nearby village by some 20%. Even in early 2003, the fishermen in Gölovası village sounded worried.
There's the old BOTAS terminal in the east and it's already limited our fishing ground. Soon the security zone will be extended for another mile. Not much ground will be left for our fishing activity.
Under the Turkish law, the fishermen of Gölovası were not considered eligible for, but the World Bank guidelines required it. As in many other locations, BTC teams engaged the communities openly in the BTC construction process. Various consultation meetings with fishermen were held and academic surveys conducted.
We prefer getting cash so we can quit fishing and establish another business for the future. We could do farming or animal husbandry. These are all possible.
But the compensation process for the Gölovası fishermen was going to be a long one, because most experts specializing in sustainable development prefer a long-term solution over a quick cash fix. Just across the fishermen's village, an intense period of construction activity had already started. Jetty piles were stored onshore before the team started offshore piling work. The future tank area was being prepared for 7 large tanks, each one of them to store 1 million barrels. A few kilometers north, pipeline construction teams were celebrating the first welding on June 3, 2003. Soon after, teams were going to face a long section of rocky terrain while trenching.
On our 330 kilometre stretch of pipeline, we've got round about 30 kilometres of solid rock to deal with. Much of this we can use a rock breaker on, but there will be occasions when we need to use explosives. And you can imagine the safety issues associated with storage and handling of explosives.
About 100 kilometers to the north, in the Taurus Mountains, an archaeological team was excavating an ancient site lying on the right-of-way.
Here we came across many tiles and ceramics related to late Roman and early Byzantine periods. We also came across a deer figure engraved in marble next to an early Christian church.
Prior to construction, archaeological surveys helped to determine the actual route of BTC. But in some cases, the pipeline had to go by or through archaeological sites. Therefore, the BTC Pipeline Company contracted the best national and international archaeological teams to excavate various sites. The aim was to hand over any found objects and artifacts to regional museums.
In Turkey, prior to BTC, we didn't even have an archaeological section in our environmental impact assessments. In our pre-construction surveys, we registered around 300 archaeological sites, and it contributed a great deal to our scientific understanding.
While traveling along BTC, one can come across many historical sites that relate to ancient trade routes and civilizations. Archaeological work carried out for BTC would unearth artifacts and information about thousands of years of human life along 1,768 kilometers of the pipeline route. An ancient route now being revived as the East-West Energy Corridor. The first pipe lowering on the BTC pipeline took place in Azerbaijan near Sangachal terminal. Before their lowering, welded pipe sections were lifted in the air and their protective coatings checked.
It's a bit like they're in an orchestra. They've all played their instruments before, but this is the first time you saw them today. They've come together. We have the lowering informant, and he's almost like the conductor. He orchestrates them, and he basically makes sure that everything goes according to plan and goes smoothly.
Along the BTC pipeline, varying pipe wall thicknesses were specified to match the conditions encountered in specific locations. Each pipe section was also treated with a 3-layer polymer coating to protect against corrosion. Along the BTC route, engineers have been careful to avoid hazards such as active seismic zones and landslips. But where rerouting was not an option, engineers used design and technology to minimize the risks. Where BTC was crossing an active earthquake zone, engineers used a fairly wide trapezoidal trench with sloping sides. It allows the fill within the trench to move easily up the slope if the fault moves. As a result, the pipeline would only shift minimally. Health and safety at all BTC project sites was a constant theme. Teams across the 3 countries went through extensive trainings. Road safety was a primary concern. Strict speed limits were applied and all driving after sunset was forbidden during the entire project lifetime. Protective gear had to be worn at all times and safe work rules were daily practice even for non-technical social and environmental teams. BTC officials hope these could be one of the more long-lasting benefits to the industry in Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. In Azerbaijan, with topsoil stripping and pipe stringing ongoing, teams were also welding the pipe in the eastern part of the pipeline section. In Shemkir region in western Azerbaijan, an archaeological team was excavating a site on a riverbank before construction teams started their work on this location.
If there are archaeological monuments within the pipeline corridor, then they have to be excavated until construction teams start their work.
What if not?
Well, then the construction cannot commence.
In this Bronze Age graveyard, no skeletons were found, but various objects were discovered. Archaeologists believe these objects belong to people whose bodies might have been returned to Mother Nature in some other way than being buried. Also, in neighboring Georgia, local journalists were visiting one of the main archaeological sites discovered during BTC surveys. At Ali Baba site, archaeologists were explaining the significance of the site, which contained graves that dated from as early as the 12th century BC. Unearthed items such as jewelry were cleaned and registered for more research at the Archaeological Institute in Tbilisi.
Besides these jewelries, we also found other interesting objects such as ceramic items, iron items and other jewelries. We've also started opening the tombs. This one was found in the 51st tomb. It's a great necklace with amber and other precious stones, and it dates back to the 5th century BC.
Public interest in Georgia's rich cultural heritage is widespread in the country. In Georgia, BTC continued its active engagement in protecting that heritage during the entire project lifetime. During the 3 years of BTC's construction, political developments and governmental changes took place in Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. In Turkey, a new government was elected and a totally new cabinet was formed.
We had changes in the leadership in those 3 countries, and certainly in Georgia and in Turkey that meant that really we had to do quite a lot of work to familiarize the new leadership, the new governments with the project, to re-establish relationships with those governments.
Mətbuat orqanları diqqətini Azərbaycana yönəldi.
In Azerbaijan, İlham Aliyev was officially elected to presidency and took over from his father, Heydar Aliyev, in October 2003. The former president had been hospitalized and passed away in December, leaving a long legacy behind to be continued by İlham Aliyev.
The transition in Azerbaijan went smoothly because İlham Aliyev had been groomed for the position. He had been a vice president of SOCAR, and I think the handoff went very well.
In November 2003, a peaceful revolution in Georgia changed the course of the country. President Shevardnadze resigned in the midst of mounting criticism following disputed parliamentary elections. He had ruled over Georgia for 11 years, since the early 1990s. The new Georgian flag, carried by followers of the national movement, was an early sign of many changes that will follow. The young leader of the opposition, Mikhail Saakashvili, presented a more Western style in politics and was elected president with a majority vote in January 2004.
And then you have a new regime that came in, was not involved in the pipeline before, had a fundamental degree of suspicion about it because they had not been involved. And as the team knows, we lost months in that trying to work through the interpretation of the project for a new regime. And then there was that point where President Saakashvili put a stop order on the project. So I flew out there, Assistant Secretary Jones flew out there to try and get this turned off out of our belief that this was the best thing for Georgia to get this project moving. And then it worked, and then the Saakashvili team has, in the end, been very supportive.
The poor state of Georgia's infrastructure and the remoteness of many of the work sites complicated an already intricate logistical task.
When they came into country, I think they had an expectation that there were a lot of infrastructure, government support, subcontractors, material that would be available to them that just wasn't. Georgia has not faced a project on this scale in anyone's recent memory, and that has posed to be a very big hurdle for the construction contractor to overcome.
The contractor in Georgia divided construction activity into two parallel operations. West of Tsalka, teams concentrated their work on welding and backfilling, as well as dealing with the tons of rock. The steep slopes encountered in the mountain sections were a special challenge for both men and machinery. Even though the focus of activity remained fixed on the higher elevations along the pipeline route, plans were put in place to shift operations to lower-lying sections once winter arrived. While construction moved ahead, extensive data collection and public consultation were also undertaken. This important feedback was needed for the financing of BTC. Lead potential lenders, the International Finance Corporation and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, held a series of meetings along the entire BTC route.
On behalf of the IFC and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development,
the aim was to ensure that the massive amount of information gathered as part of the environmental and social impact assessment process accurately reflected the opinions, views, and concerns of those with an interest in the project. Two leading international banks played a critical and leading role in the financing of BTC.
First, we took a lead role as agreed, both the EBRD and ourselves, in helping coordinate the technical review of the project, and in particular on the social and environmental aspects of the project. Our IFC's standards on social and environmental review of projects was used by all parties as a reference point.
And BP has been a very good partner. It hasn't been easy, probably for them, not for us, but it is very, very well done. And I need to insist on this because it's crucial that we work in good partnership with companies. We have shared the same views, the same approaches, the same vision, the same challenges. And I can say that even on many points they have gone further than the standards we have. And that's exactly the way in which we need to work.
In February 2004, a signing ceremony in Baku marked the completion of agreements covering the third-party financing of BTC. Approximately 70% of the project cost was being funded by a group of third-party financial institutions, such as the EBRD, the IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, export credit agencies of 7 countries and a syndicate of 15 commercial banks. This final step was accomplished after more than 2 years of far-reaching consultation, monitoring and scrutiny of the project's environmental and social impact. While teams could easily continue work in Azerbaijan and the lower sections of Georgia, winter had already hit mountainous sections of eastern Turkey. The contractor here was taking advantage of working in cold temperatures. Heavy equipment moved easily on frozen ground.
During the summer, we basically reached a position at KP 485 in this high mountainous area here, whereby because of the heavy snow up here, we couldn't continue. So the plan was, and the plan was implemented, that we move basically to KP 278, which is pump station 2, and continue working in this flat area here, known as the Erzurum Plain. And that's basically what we've done. We started here. We skipped this high area here because of heavy snow, and the work is continuing on this flat area here, and we're expecting to reach approximately KP 348 by the end of April.
Work at the 4 pump stations in Turkey was affected by seasonal difficulties, as expected. Construction continued on the camp locations and civil work progressed as long as weather allowed for safe operations. While traveling along BTC, a visit to traditional minstrels of Erzurum revealed a spontaneous song specially sung for BTC.
Aile kurban vatana yararlı olsun, Baku-Ceyhan boru hattı. Milletimin yüzü gülsün, Baku-Ceyhan boru hattı. Vatandaşı yüzü gülsün, Baku-Ceyhan boru hattı.
This sarcastic yet inspiring improvisation was a true sign of ownership felt for the BTC pipeline in Turkey. It also reflected hopes that benefits would come with Azeri oil. On Caspian shores near Baku, an international team was working on the construction of large jackets and topsides for the Azeri Chirag Güneşli offshore project. In December 2003, once the construction of the central Azeri jacket was complete, the team loaded out the entire structure onto a transportation barge. In March 2005, the team carried the CA jacket, 15,000 tons in weight, all the way to its location at Central Azeri Field in the Caspian Sea. The CA jacket was towed to its final destination in 26 hours, and the entire trip was 85 nautical miles, an equivalent of 158 kilometers. Cutting of the sea fastening went on throughout the night, freeing the jacket from the transportation barge. It took engineers and workers several months to construct this jacket. In seconds, it would reach its maximum submergence. One of the biggest steps for the Central Azeri platform, which would feed first crude oil for the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. On a quarterly basis, representatives from BTC's shareholder companies held regular meetings to review the project and to take necessary decisions. In March 2004, after another meeting in Baku, board members were taken by the BTC project train to Yevlak to visit the construction site of a pump station. As part of BTC's health and safety initiatives, a special railway car was added to the national train operating between the east and west of the country. This special train transported project staff daily between various locations along the pipeline. On the way to Yevlak, board members explained their company's strategy and vision regarding the BTC project.
Investing in BTC is, of course, because we have an 8.56% interest in the upstream project, ACG. And I think it's fair to say that Statoil has been one of the companies promoting BTC to be a reality.
Realization of East-West Corridor energy projects is strategically and economically important for Turkey and for TPAO.
We are the first Japanese company which started a business in Caspian region, the Caucasus region, and we are the first company who spudded the well in Azerbaijan. So our presence in Azerbaijan has been evaluated very highly. So we'd like to respond this evaluation. So, and we would continue our business very actively in future also.
Around Yevlak, the construction of both the pipeline and the second pump station was monitored and evaluated. On their way back, BTC board members also talked about future energy prospects.
We will have important production in the north of the Caspian Sea, in Kazakhstan, and we have to evacuate this crude oil by a pipeline. And so there are several pipelines. The North Pipeline, the CPC, we don't have today space in this pipeline. So we decided to join the BTC, which is one of the major pipelines, and which is going to the Mediterranean Sea, which is quite a good way to evacuate our crude oil.
Yes, we are operators in the North Caspian Sea PSA.
Do you see any future prospects for Kazakh oil to come through BTC in the future?
Well, I see that there is a good chance for Kazakh oil to come to BTC. There are discussions between states of Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, and our companies are looking with increasing interest into BTC as a way of exporting our oil.
Along BTC, long before any bulldozers arrived, environmental teams were combing the right-of-way to identify the many rare or endangered plant species that grow in the area. Botanists employed by BTC found that along some sections, as many as 150 different plants could be identified in a single square meter during the growing season. Here in the Borjomi region, in a botanical garden in Bakuriani, botanists transplanted rare or endangered plant species to a special nursery. Scientists worked here along with a refugee family that was taking care of the entire botanical garden. David Kikodze of the Georgian Environmental Consultancy was pleased with the results.
I would say so far it's been, extremely successful, because I did not expect that we have 90% of survivability of the translocated plants, because it's always hard for the plants. It's a big stress to be translocated from one location to the other. But I would say that as far as we are using both living plant material translocated from their original habitat and the seeds, so I expect this project to be highly successful.
As construction moved ahead, the collected plants were going to be replanted in their original location by the use of geographical positioning system. In Georgia, the BTC route passes through a number of environmentally sensitive areas, particularly in the Tsolka, Tabatskuri and Borjomi sections. National and international NGOs expressed concerns about the need to protect the environment in these regions. Additional pipeline protection measures that go well beyond industry norms have been applied in the Borjomi Valley. These include burying the pipeline to a greater depth, installing thicker wall pipe and additional block and check valves. Just across the border in Turkey, construction teams were facing a challenging steep slope. Here, a dense forest required the right-of-way to be less than the usual 28 meters width to meet environmental standards. Engineers came up with an unusual technical solution and decided to use a cable crane system.
As soon as the pipe is carried up to the slope and placed to its position in the trench, it gets ready for welding.
In northeastern sections of the pipeline route, teams were also actively engaged in the implementation of BTC's community investment program. Hasköy was one of the villages where BTC started quick impact development projects to meet an urgent local need. The International Blue Crescent, a partner NGO with BTC Pipeline Company, implemented the water project.
As you have seen in this village, the houses aren't so close to each other. But it's very important, so we have started our implementation today by digging on the top of the hill.
BTC's local contractor provided machinery and vehicles.
I mean, with the help of the governorship, we will have a chance to complete this project in a very short time. This will help the community to have water in their homes in a very short time before winter arrives.
BTC did not allocate any workers for this project, hence the villagers worked actively in the construction process.
I think one has to look at general development experience across the globe, and everything points to the fact that if you don't have contributions, it could be in labor, it could be in money, it could be in materials, it could be in all kinds of different things, it could be in land. But if you don't have a sense of ownership of a project, you will never get the success that you really want to achieve. And I think that's partly been largely the failure of many government programs.
While driving to the south, a quick stop in the lower Taurus Mountains revealed that most of the archaeological work at this site we visited almost a year ago was already finished. Pipeline construction teams were stringing pipe joints, while others continued opening the trench. About 100 kilometers to the south, the team had almost finished pipelaying activities, but work on special sections was ongoing. Ceyhan River, 310 meters wide, was the biggest river crossing in Turkey. Here, preparations took almost a year. Concrete-coated pipe had to be prepared while excavation work continued in the river. The final pull had to be undertaken in several strings, taking a total of 4 days. At Ceyhan Marine Terminal, the construction and hydrotesting of 7 large oil tanks were almost finished. Work on the loading lines was ongoing. Offshore, a challenging construction phase was about to be completed, as the last pile was driven into the seabed.
Some 530 piles in total were driven. And when you think that they started pile driving in July of last year, that means roughly 530 piles in 14 months, which is good effort, and it's faster than actually was planned.
Concrete work on the 2.6-kilometer jetty was still ongoing. Sea turtles are one of the few species so ancient that they watched the dinosaurs evolve and become extinct. Today, green sea turtles are among the most frequently killed marine animals. They live around 50 to 60 years and are known to return to their birthplace for nesting every couple of years. The coast around Ceyhan Terminal is home to several nesting areas for green sea turtles. As part of BTC's environmental investment program, a project was undertaken for their sustainable protection.
These 4 beaches in the vicinity are not registered as nesting areas in Turkey. As of the 21st of July, we have identified 135 nests, and this data is of crucial importance for our research.
Marine biologists conducted studies on their migration routes because very little is known about their life cycle. Satellite transmitters funded by the BTC project were attached to 4 green sea turtles in 2004.
Well, the interesting thing using satellite telemetry is that we can see that turtles that nest in Turkey also go to the other areas of the Mediterranean. For example, we have seen turtles that nest in Cyprus in the north will go to Syria or Libya, and they will swim and feed in the waters of these countries. So this work today hopefully enables people from other countries to work in cooperation with everyone, because the Mediterranean isn't that big.
Each transmitter has a lifetime of 1 year and could send out regular data about the geographical location and depth of the sea turtle. (1,500 kilometers in the north), teams entered the final phase of the pipeline construction. Special sections like the Western Kura River crossing were underway. Azerbaijan was the first section of BTC where the construction was finished, because the landscape did not pose as many challenges as in Georgia and Turkey. In eastern sections of the pipeline, teams had already finished reinstating some of the special sections. Here in the Gobustan region, erosion was the biggest challenge. Initially, it was feared that the construction of BTC could make erosion worse and even threaten the integrity of the pipeline. Therefore, additional control measures were required.
Placing the mattings, we avoided erosion, and at the same time we created microclimates inside the little squares so that vegetation could grow back as soon as possible, because at the end what we want is vegetation to come back again.
At Sangachal terminal by the Caspian Sea, construction of the 2 giant tanks was finished, and the additional 3rd tank was being painted. The main pump station for BTC was also 95% complete. All pumps were installed, electrical cables pulled, and piping work was finished. Throughout its construction, the Sangachal terminal expansion program had an outstanding performance in health and safety issues. In the 4th quarter of 2004, the Sangachal team had recorded 15 million man-hours without a day away from work case, a significant success in the industry. In September 2004, the Azerbaijan Republic celebrated the 10th anniversary of the contract of the century. Now those 10 years had passed, and major projects were underway to transport hydrocarbons from the Azerbaijani sector of the Caspian Sea toward markets. While the contract of the century was being celebrated, teams at a construction site near Baku were finalizing their work on the Central Azeri platform. Once tests were completed, the CA deck, 15,500 tons in weight, was loaded out onto a transportation barge, requiring a 2-day operation. "5 days later, the offshore installation team started towing the Central Azeri deck to its final destination in the Caspian Sea. This delicate journey took 18 hours, requiring the services of the two most powerful tugs in the region. When Central Azeri arrived at its final destination, the installation was postponed to the following day due to strong winds. The topsides float-over technique was being used for the first time in the Caspian and required millimeter sensitivity for a successful installation. Once the barge was secure inside the jacket, pumping systems opened and they slowly ballasted the barge down until the full weight of the topsides had been transferred to the jacket. 13,000 man-hours were spent for this operation without a single incident. The installation was a major landmark towards first oil for the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. A few days later, Presidents Ilham Aliyev and Mikhail Saakashvili met on the Azerbaijani-Georgian border and celebrated the Golden Welt, connecting the two ends of the pipeline. This landmark occasion was a significant milestone in connecting up the Azerbaijani and Georgian sections. It was also a big step forward towards first oil. On the 18th of February 2005, the Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev visited the Central Azeri platform in the Caspian Sea. The offshore ceremony announced the official commencement of oil production from the Azeri Chirag Güneşli full field development. The Central Azeri is one of the technologically most advanced platforms in the world, with a fully automated drilling rig. The CA deck is designed to process 420,000 barrels of oil a day, which will produce a significant portion of the oil to be transported through the BTC pipeline. At full capacity, more than 1 million barrels of oil are expected to flow through BTC every day. This will generate an income of millions of dollars for the Azerbaijan Republic. Long before oil revenues started to improve people's lives, the BTC pipeline company tried to bring tangible benefits to communities near the pipeline route.
1, 2, 3, great.
Near Kürdemir, central Azerbaijan, the opening of a local clinic was a significant contribution to people's daily lives. The project was funded by BTC and implemented by the International Medical Corps. The construction of the clinic took almost 6 months with active participation of the local community.
According to the needs and requests of this community, we started working here earlier than the planned schedule. We have modern devices and we can easily solve many problems of these people. I hope it will get better and better in the future.
It's very important, of course, to have a new clinic, but it's just as important to do the medical training for the nurses, for the doctors, to provide drugs and medicines and supplies, to provide new equipment, and to provide, hopefully, a cost recovery mechanism that can provide for the sustainable services to be provided through the clinic.
The BTC project decided to continue providing funds and assistance to some of the community investment projects in the operational phase.
In many instances, what we're trying to do is build on what has already been achieved. We aren't starting any new and, let's say, original projects. What we're trying to do is build on what's already been done, reinforce the experiences, the skills that we developed in the first part of the CIP, and make sure that they take root in the communities along the pipeline route. We'll also be focusing on, instead of a broad brush approach to community investment, we'll be looking more closely at those communities that have performed well. Our hope here is to be able to take those communities that have performed well, give them more projects or give them new projects.
In neighboring Georgia, BTC decided to implement a special community investment project after having consultations with various NGOs, the government and local communities. The Improved Schools project covered the entire pipeline route and aimed to rehabilitate the infrastructure of 50 secondary schools and improve their methods of education for 28,000 students and 2,000 teachers.
Our target is to support a new methodology. This is active learning methodology, to introduce this methodology in the schools, in our target schools, in order to improve teaching process here.
At this school in Salka, a computer lab was established with an uninterrupted power supply provided by solar panels and an internet connection through satellite hookup.
During these lessons, we have an opportunity to have direct contact with computers. Right now, I'm trying to improve my typing skills. I also bring some CDs with me. Rap music is my favorite.
The school building was also refurbished, while classes continued.
Before the pipeline project, there were no funds for refurbishment. This project helped us to reconstruct the school. Everyone did his best to finish it as soon as possible. It was all done up to best standards and good quality.
In Salka and in other communities, the biggest challenge was to manage people's expectations, as well as to engage them actively in the developmental process. At the second pump station near Salka, most of the challenges were already behind. Welding inside the pump house was ongoing and piping work about to be finalized. Along the pipeline, the Kura River crossing in western Georgia brought many challenges to the team. Weather was one of the biggest problems.
Akosiki doesn't get too much snow historically, but it is very, very cold. And this year we had snow before the end of December, deep snow, and we've had temperatures down to -25.
The contractor here had to excavate an 860-meter long trench to pull the pipe across the riverbed. 500 meters of concrete-coated and welded pipe had already been pulled across the trench. Soon the rest of the pipe string would also be pulled across, but the weather was the biggest obstacle. Across the border in Turkey, in the snowy village of Hasköy, there was joy and happiness. The water project here had finally been completed and water supply to homes commenced.
My mom used to carry water home on donkeys, and when she could not carry bottles during winter, she used to melt down the snow, and we were drinking it. Now the younger generation doesn't have to suffer from water-based illnesses anymore.
The implementation of this project took much longer than anticipated because people here are traditionally used to receiving such services from the state. Villagers had never played an active role in such projects before.
Sivil toplum örgütleri pek bilinmiyor.
People here didn't have an idea about NGOs. The biggest problem was that we were not a state agency or entity. It took a long time to develop their faith in us and in our project.
Here and in most other communities, a lot of effort was invested in people so they could understand the importance of doing something for themselves. But the effort was worth it and paid off sooner than expected. At BTC's southern end, the installation of the loading arms on the BTC jetty was almost finished. Near the jetty, the BTC-funded sea turtle expedition was working on Ceyhan Beach. Sea turtle nests were carefully identified and special cages were brought in to warn people not to damage them. As in most other environmental investment projects, the education of local people was the most important challenge. On the other side of the jetty, a compensation plan for the fishermen of Gölovası village was also completed. It had taken the experts almost 3 years to find an appropriate sustainable development solution.
Rather than making cash payment, we thought we should help them to choose sustainable livelihood packages in order to make sure that even after the payment they have a regular salary, they have a proper livelihood resource to continue their daily lives.
Almost half of those fishermen were above 45 years old. Through consultations, we identified the possibility of their retirement from social insurance companies. With their consent, the compensation was paid to social security institutions. We also supported some fishermen to buy tractors and cattle to improve their existing agricultural activities. BTC was not the first industrial project affecting their economic activity in the vicinity of Ceyhan, but for the first time in Turkey, their losses were compensated.
Another pipeline.
Victor Hugo worked as the lead environmental monitor in the most southerly section of BTC. His expertise was to make the pipeline invisible. When pipe-laying activities were finished, the collected topsoil was used to restore the right-of-way to its original condition. Erosion and sedimentation control measures were also put in place to avoid erosion.
You can see, for example, over here, we have some already vegetation is growing over here. So the important thing is to have this vegetation to grow. So later on, the youth mat will disappear because we'll get biodegradation. And then this vegetation that you can see over here is the vegetation is going to protect our soil against erosion.
Seed and youth mat applications served as temporary erosion protection. Later, youth mats would biodegrade and the original vegetation was expected to replace the grass. On special sections, riverbanks were also stabilized. At some locations, the riverbed was supported by evenly cut small rocks. In Turkey, an ecologically sensitive area was home to some unique plant and bird life. Posov Wildlife Protection Area, near to the Georgian border, was designated to protect the Caucasian black grouse, a globally threatened and restricted range species.
Because of the black grouse, we had to suspend construction work for a period of time. It was a time when we would dearly have liked to have been able to do the construction, but the requirements of the environmental standards are of paramount importance, and so it was appropriate and necessary for us to stop that work until we had the all clear from the environmental specialists that the activity could continue.
During various environmental studies associated with the BTC pipeline, scientists enhanced their information about and knowledge of the black grouse.
Great things that's happening through the BTC projects is that we're looking at both its distribution but also from work in Georgia on the actual ecology, because apart from its breeding behaviour, really we still don't fully understand the species.
During these studies, the black grouse was observed on several locations in Turkey. A similar BTC-funded environmental project in Georgia observed the black grouse along the pipeline in the Akalsike region and the higher Caucasus Mountains. Turkish and Georgian biologists, along with international experts, also started a joint conservation program across national borders. Across the three countries, spring is best celebrated in Azerbaijan at the Nowruz festivities that take place every year in March. For thousands of years, spring has marked the end of winter and the arrival of a new era in which hopes will become realities. In April of 2005, the BTC operations team traveled along the entire pipeline route from Sangachal to Ceyhan. The team assessed levels of preparedness in all the major facilities.
All of the facilities, they're very well done, very well designed, use top equipment, top material. You could have looked at any of the pump stations or any of the pipeline block valves and things like that, and they would look no different anywhere else in the world.
As pipeline operations team slowly took over the BTC pipeline, the time had also come for first oil celebrations in Azerbaijan. Baku, the world's oil capital a century ago, was back on the global map with first oil celebrations taking place on 25th of May 2005. Hundreds of journalists were waiting inside the big marquee at Sangachal terminal to cover the inauguration of the Azerbaijani section of BTC. The celebration started at the newly built Caspian Energy Center, where the presidents of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Georgia and Turkey, as well as the US Secretary of Energy, the Duke of York, the Chief Executive of BP, and the presidents of SOCAR left commemorative handprints in clay. The grand ceremony continued inside the big marquee facing the main pump station for BTC.
The deal of the century and works carried out since then contributed greatly to Azerbaijan and its development. Its effects continue to the present day. Our country is on a path of renovation, modernization, and development. I am sure that soon Azerbaijan will turn into an economically powerful country.
The ceremony was attended by the two other host countries' presidents, as well as other international guests coming from all over the world.
As the United Kingdom's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, I am delighted that BP is so involved, and also that many other British companies have and are playing a leading role in this infrastructure project.
We are confident that this cooperation framework will permit in the long term to progressively integrate the energy markets in the Caspian Basin and Black Sea regions with the EU internal energy market.
100 years ago, half the world's supplies came from this region. Now, in 2005, Azerbaijan is regaining that role at the heart of a global industry.
Then the moment had arrived to turn the valve for first oil to enter the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. A significant moment marking a perfect example of international partnership in years of hard work along 1,768 kilometers from the Caspian to the Mediterranean seas. As BTC was inaugurated at Sangachal, the focus changed from Azerbaijan to Georgia. Commissioning and reinstatement activities continued throughout the summer. In Azerbaijan and Georgia, the same right-of-way was used for both BTC and the South Caucasus gas pipelines. In some parts in Georgia, where the construction of both pipelines was finished, the right-of-way was also reinstated.
The first part is to bring back the contour to how it was. And as you can see behind us, we have diversion dikes and also on the right-of-way. The idea of the diversion dikes is to be able to dissipate the energy of the water and to bring it out of the right-of-way in a controlled manner.
The teams continued to carry out activities such as recontouring, topsoil replacement, and installation of permanent erosion control measures. On flat areas, former owners of land had already started farming. On October the 12th, 2005, the BTC pipeline was officially inaugurated in Georgia. Hundreds of guests from all over the world gathered for a series of exciting events. The inauguration took place at the first pump station near Gardabani and was hosted by the President of Georgia.
Our countries are developing, our economies are developing, and the importance of our countries is increasing. All this is based on a combination of our political will, correct economic calculations, and hard work.
The opening ceremony was attended by the presidents of Azerbaijan and Turkey, as well as government representatives from the region, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
The United States has strongly supported BTC project, and we are proud to stand here today to see the fruits of that partnership. This project will enhance global security in energy and regional cooperation to lead to many, many projects to follow.
President says by this one, please don't touch anything.
The event showed appreciation for the years of work and investment both for Georgia as well as the shareholders of the BTC pipeline company. Later, the celebration continued at the National Museum in Tbilisi, where the BTC Cultural Heritage Exhibition was opened. The exhibition was well attended by senior officials of the Georgian government, including the President Mikhail Saakashvili.
Only the companies, commercial companies that have a long-term plans, want to have long-term relations with governments, with states, can do this kind of projects, can this kind of exhibitions or Jomi Park projects or things like that. So actually, it's the product of very good and productive relations of government of Georgia and the commercial organization like BTC Consortium.
The first oil celebration in Georgia finished with a public concert at the Lokomotiv Stadium in Tbilisi. The Georgian state dance company Sukhishvili and the UK band Simply Red were the highlight of a series of performances and left a mark in people's memories. The Borjomi region lies on the ancient trade and migration routes between Eastern and Western Caucasus. It also serves as a gateway into Anatolia. Here in Tadrisi, the BTC pipeline company funded the conservation and restoration project of a medieval monastery.
This used to be a nunnery in medieval times, and it was destroyed during the Turkish invasion in the 16th century. Today, we are not able to restore everything, because we don't know how it looked like several centuries ago. In this case, we will conserve and partially restore, but people will be able to pray inside the church.
The pipeline route is designed to avoid this monastery and the cemetery here at Tadrisi. The project that we have going on here is funded for the community as well as for monuments protection and conservation effort.
It took this team almost 5 months to complete the project. In November, the project was finished and people started praying inside the church. In November 2005, Azerbaijani oil crossed the Georgian-Turkish border and reached the first pump station in Turkey. At this location in the higher mountains, commissioning teams were busily working towards first oil for Ceyhan. On the 18th of November, 4 million barrels of oil were already in the BTC pipeline.
What you see in front of you are the monitors that the operator will be viewing on a 24-hour basis. From that, he can actually see the system right from Sangachal right through to Ceyhan. He can see the various pump stations. He can see the pressures, the temperatures in the line, how many pumps are running. So currently, the pipeline will be operated from Sangachal, but in the event of a problem at Sangachal, the pipeline can also be operated from Ceyhan.
For most people, the most common sight along the BTC route is the daily presence of mounted horse patrols. But the integrated control system will not only detect any problems such as possible spills, but will also help to contain them by isolating sections of the pipeline. Maintenance is also key to successful operations.
The cleaning operations through just the regular pigs to clean the pipeline, we run them a few times a week. Intelligent pigging is more complex, work, and we usually do it once every 5 years. And these pigs, they are capable to carry out a lot of data, writing, and then we have all of these data available. We can monitor, we can analyze and develop necessary interventions in advance to ensure that our pipeline is in a good shape.
Throughout the winter and spring, BTC teams continued biorestoration and reinstatement activities. Linefill teams commissioned the line kilometer by kilometer until they reached Ceyhan Marine Terminal on BTC's southern end. Along BTC, most of the construction camps were already demobilized. Initially, dozens of pipe storage yards were set up to support the construction teams. During winter, all these temporary yards were returned back to their original landowners. Villagers had also started using temporarily and permanently acquired land. May 27th, 2006, Ceyhan Marine Terminal. The British Hawthorne, the first tanker to take Azerbaijani oil to world markets, had arrived at the BTC jetty. This was the moment a great project team, the international community, and the three countries of Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey had been waiting for more than 10 years.
BP has learnt a lot through this process. We've learnt how to create alignment across three countries. We've learnt how to create alignment between our partners, between our contractors, between multilateral agencies who've been very significantly involved in the financing of the pipeline. It is, of course, a stunning engineering achievement. It covers almost 1,800 kilometers, and when it's at capacity, will ship 1 million barrels a day of new, light crude oil onto the world markets.
The first tanker loaded with oil from the ACG development in the Caspian Sea departed for international markets on the 4th of June 2006. But the pipeline was going to be inaugurated with the return of the British Hawthorne on July the 13th, when all senior guests gathered at Ceyhan. July the 13th, 2006. Inside the steel tent, brought in especially for First Oil celebrations, 1,200 guests from all over the world were being seated. Three presidents, the Turkish Prime Minister, BP's Lord Browne, and other government representatives from the UK and the USA took their seats.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, please rise for the national anthems of Azerbaijan, followed by Georgia and Turkey.
The start of BTC reconfirms the role of Turkey as one of the most important points of trade into the Mediterranean and beyond. And perhaps most important of all, the new trade route opened by BTC links the region to the European economy and to the wider world.
The completion of the BTC...
The U.S. Deputy Secretary of Energy, Clay Sell, read a letter to the audience sent by the U.S. President George W. Bush.
You and your predecessors dreamed the dream and shaped this great strategic opportunity. But I would also like to thank the companies, particularly the companies that made this a reality.
The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan is an engineering wonder as well as it is a success story due to its environmental concept. The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan is a strategic project able to change the face of the region.
An international unity has become true during the realization of this project. On behalf of the Azerbaijan Republic, I would like to thank the three countries, Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, international oil companies, foreign financial institutions, national experts, oil specialists, workers, neighboring communities, and all other stakeholders.
There is no reality that cannot materialize if we really go for it. There is no dream that cannot come true if we really believe in it. And to all the skeptics, all of us can say, after what we've seen here today, never say never again.
The last speech was given by the President of Turkey.
I
would like to note that the exclusively developed cultural cooperation for the realization of this project will be the guarantee for the establishment of future projects.
One by one, representatives of the 11 partner companies inserted their symbolic pipe joint into the BTC pipeline.
And first, I'd like to invite the representative from BP. And next, I'd like to invite the representative from our Azerbaijan partner, SOCAR. And next, the representative of Chevron Texaco, please. And next, the representative from Statoil. Representative from our Turkish partner, TPAO. And next, the representative from ENI, please. And next, the representative from Total. And next, the representative from ITOCHU. And now the representative from INPEX, please. And next, the representative from ConocoPhillips. And finally, of our BTC partners, Hess. And as you can see, that was the easy part of the pipeline. It's in low ground. And now we're going to higher elevation. And for this, we're going to have to call upon greater expertise. So I'd like to ask President Cezar, Aliyev and Saakashvili, together with Prime Minister Erdogan and Lord Browne, to take the stage to put the final pieces of the project in place.
Hello Ceyhan, this is Central Luxury Platform in the Caspian Sea. We are ready. Hello Ceyhan, this is the main control room at Sangachal terminal in Azerbaijan, and we are ready.
Hello Ceyhan, this is pump station number 1 in Georgia. We are ready to.
Hello Ceyhan, this is pump station number 2 in Turkey and we are ready too.
Yes, this is the final control room along BTC and we are ready too.
As the Tekfen Orchestra played specially composed classical music, the first oil tanker, the British Hawthorne, was on the 2.6 kilometer long jetty at Ceyhan. As the entire jetty was projected on the giant screen inside the celebration venue, Michael Townsend of BTC concluded the ceremony.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the British Hawthorne.
It's become a benchmark in terms of many of the things we've accomplished, whether it's environmental standards or social standards, the way the financing has been done, how to approach some of the technical issues. Of course, when we say a benchmark, it has to be benchmarked against the next project. Now,
There isn't another pipeline that crosses 3 countries.
In terms of energy policy, the BTC's realization opens up a whole new prospect of a broader channel of oil and gas pipelines to help Europe secure its own energy diversity and therefore energy independence. Another thing BTC does is it establishes Turkey as a key friend and constructive partner in the Caucasus. And it orients, fourthly, Azerbaijan in direction toward the Euro-Atlantic community. We support the strongest, closest possible ties between Azerbaijan and the Euro-Atlantic community, consistent with Azerbaijan's own aspirations. Finally, what BTC does, along with the South Caucasus gas pipeline, is it begins to give Georgia a sense that its energy security will be strengthened by its cooperation with its neighbor Azerbaijan and its neighbor Turkey.
It is the fact that BTC will supply a quarter of the world's new demand for energy over the next 3-4 years. Globally, that's pretty significant.